Somewhere deep beyond the marked trails, something walks in perfect silence, wearing the faces of those who never came back. These are 8 true Skinwalker stories from remote forest trails. Tonight, Dread Scribe writes again. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling stories. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing where everyone is tuning in from. And if there's a story you'd like me to cover next, I'd love to hear it too. The forest after midnight feels like another planet. The air heavier. Sounds sharper, the sky a ceiling of ink where stars blink like distant watchful eyes. I'd been a park ranger for 7 years, long enough to know the trails by scent and rhythm. But that night, something in the air was off. The silence too absolute, as if the woods were holding their breath. I remember glancing at my radio, its faint green light pulsing like a heartbeat in my hand. That's when it happened. My own voice came through the static. It wasn't just similar. It was me. The tone, the pitch, the small rasp I always tried to ignore in recordings. I need help, it said. I'm near the ridge. My stomach turned. I hadn't said a word, and the ridge was 5 miles away. The rational part of my brain clung to possibilities. A prank, signal interference, maybe even playback from old frequencies. But the human part, the part wired for fear, knew better. The forest doesn't echo through radios. I called dispatch. No response. Static filled my ears like a swarm of invisible insects. The same phrase repeated, softer this time, as if my own voice were growing tired. I need help. Near the ridge. Curiosity is a poison dressed as logic. I told myself I'd check it out, just to confirm no one was hurt. The unmarked trail ahead looked like a wound slicing through the trees. My flashlight beam quivered against trunks slick with dew. As I walked, the night seemed to rearrange itself. The familiar chirr of crickets was gone, replaced by a low hum that I felt more than heard, like the vibration of power lines under skin. My boots sank into wet soil, and every step seemed to echo twice. That's what unnerved me. There was a delay, as if someone were walking exactly behind me, but one heartbeat too late. Halfway to the ridge, I stopped to rest near a creek. The air smelled metallic like rain before lightning. I leaned down to fill my canteen and froze. Across the water, another beam of light moved through the trees, mirroring mine perfectly. When I raised my flashlight, so did it. When I tilted my head, so did it. There was no reflection, only someone or something standing across from me with my exact stance. I called out. My voice came back an instant later, perfectly synchronized. "You okay?" I shouted. The reply came from my radio this time. Same tone, same breath pattern, but with one word different. "You're okay," it said. That subtle shift chilled me deeper than the night air ever could. I tried to rationalize, to remember the reports I'd read about mimicry in certain species, birds imitating human speech, or even the echo phenomena caused by overlapping frequencies. But no science accounted for timing that perfect. I stood frozen as the other light dimmed slowly, fading behind the trees as if it were retreating deeper, inviting me to follow. I wish I hadn't, because the next sound I heard wasn't over the radio. It came from directly behind me, my own voice whispering my full name, exactly the way my mother used to. I turned slowly, every muscle stiff as iron. The forest behind me was hollowed by mist, branches shivering as if the trees themselves recoiled. Nothing moved, but the air felt occupied, thick with intent. My flashlight quivered in my grip, its beam slicing through fog that glittered like powdered glass. Then from the dark came the sound of breathing. My breathing, same pace, same hitch between exhale and inhale. It was like standing next to my own ghost. Instinct told me to run, but duty whispered louder. People got lost in these woods. I couldn't let fear turn me into one of them. So I called out again, not with courage, but desperation. "Who's there?" My voice cracked, echoing off bark and distance. The reply came a heartbeat later, perfectly mirrored. "Who's there?" Same crack, same tremor. I felt something inside me unravel. Whatever this was, it didn't just mimic sound. It mimicked pattern, behavior, thought, like it was learning me in real time. I switched my radio to an open emergency channel, half hoping a human voice would cut through. Instead, I heard movement, footsteps, deliberate and slow, weaving through the static. Then faintly a whisper, "You're late." That stopped me cold. My father used to say that to me when I overslept for morning patrols. A phrase no one else knew. I scanned the trees wildly, the beam of light catching what looked like a shoulder vanishing behind a trunk. Pale, smooth, almost featureless. My pulse thundered, I chased it. The forest blurred around me, branches slapping my arms, roots clawing at my boots. I couldn't tell if I was pursuing or being led. The voice called again, now fractured, my own words bending like metal under pressure. Help me! I stumbled into a clearing, panting, and froze. There, in the middle of the space, was my ranger jacket. It hung from a branch like a skin shed mid-motion, sleeves swaying gently in the windless air. My badge glinted dully, scratched with something jagged. I leaned closer. The scratches formed letters, my initials carved backward. Behind me, the radio clicked again, softer now. Turn around. It wasn't a command. It was an imitation, like a student repeating a teacher's voice. I did. What I saw wasn't me, but it was close. The shape was wrong. Joints bent in places they shouldn't, the face smooth where eyes should have been, yet I felt it staring. Its posture mirrored mine exactly, down to the trembling hand gripping the flashlight. When I lifted my arm, it did too. But when I lowered it, it didn't. The beam of its light stayed locked on me, steady and unblinking. Something in the forest cracked. Not a twig, but something larger, older, like the spine of the world snapping under the weight of silence. Then just as suddenly it was gone. My radio fell quiet. The woods breathed again. Crickets, wind, life, all returned as if someone had lifted a lid from over the world. I left that night without looking back. But a week later, the logs from the patrol were reviewed. There was a recording, my own voice calling for help, time-stamped exactly when I'd heard it. The problem was, the radio tower had been offline that night. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear it. Not from the forest, but from inside the static of my own thoughts. Maybe the thing I found wasn't mimicking me. Maybe it was learning how to replace me. Some nights in the forest feel sentient, like the air itself is aware of you. That night, under a moon so thin it looked carved from bone, I set up my equipment among the pines to document animal migration. I'd done this for years, studying population decline across state parks. But what I found that week had nothing to do with natural patterns. The first discovery was small, a deer carcass lying on its side, arranged perfectly along the cardinal directions. North to south, east to west, eyes open, as if waiting for permission to move. I told myself it was ritual poaching, a cruel but human act. But when the next carcass appeared, a fox positioned the same way, I began taking samples. No signs of predation, no wounds, no rigor mortis patterns. The body looked placed, not killed. My thermal camera showed faint traces of warmth still radiating from it, though it had been dead for hours. That shouldn't have been possible. I started marking GPS points, and the locations began forming something I couldn't ignore, a spiral. By the third night, curiosity had replaced sleep. I moved my tent closer to the center of that spiral. The woods were too still, every noise muffled like a dream underwater. Around 2 a.m., my motion sensor tripped. The camera clicked to life, capturing a flash of movement. Something crawling on all fours, but not quite. The limbs bent wrong, elbows inverted, spine arching too high. I paused the footage and zoomed in. What I saw wasn't an animal. It was a figure, naked and hairless, skin pale as ash, head tilted at an unnatural angle toward the lens. I replayed the clip over and over, trying to convince myself it was distortion, a lighting artifact, pareidolia, anything logical. But logic has limits. Each time the creature appeared, it was closer to the camera. It didn't walk. It rearranged itself, folding forward, bones moving like liquid under flesh. My hand trembled as I checked the timestamp. The video lasted 47 seconds. I remembered hearing only one noise that entire night, a faint cracking sound, like wet branches bending in the wind. The next morning, the spiral was complete. A perfect circle of flattened pine needles surrounded my tent. The center, directly beneath where I had slept, was smooth, as if something heavy had rested there. I packed my things and left the sensors running. Science, I told myself, demanded data, not fear, but fear kept following. 3 nights later, my colleague, Dr. Harlow, called from base camp. He'd reviewed my footage and asked, almost whispering, "Did you notice it's looking into the lens every time?" I hadn't told him that I'd already erased the memory card. I couldn't bear to see what came next. Still, I checked the hard drive that night. A new file had appeared, one I didn't record. It was labeled with the date and coordinates of that same spiral. I opened it hesitantly, heart hammering. The screen showed my tent from a distance, filmed by something moving closer, step by deliberate step. The last frame stopped on my sleeping face. The idea that something had filmed me while I slept felt like a splinter beneath my skin. Too small to remove, too deep to ignore. I drove back to the site before sunrise, the road glistening with mist, every tree leaning in as if eavesdropping. When I arrived, the clearing looked different. The air hung heavy with that sterile iron smell that clings to hospitals and rain-soaked soil. My tent was gone. In its place lay my camera, upright, lens cracked, still powered on. The red recording light blinked like a heartbeat. I pressed play. The footage began mid-motion, jittery and unstable, like something was holding the camera too close. The angle swayed through the pines, the ground visible only in flashes of pale limbs darting past. I caught glimpses of bark, soil, bone-white skin, then my own voice, whispering faintly, "You shouldn't be here." But I hadn't spoken. I was home that night. My hands went cold. It wasn't just recording me. It was remembering me. That's when the rational part of me tried to reclaim control. I told myself it could be auditory contamination, overlapping frequencies, echoes of my previous recordings. I'd read about it in a paper on echolocation anomalies. Still, when the camera panned to reveal the spiral again, something inside me cracked open. At the center, where my tent once stood, was a hollow depression the size of a human body. My flashlight trembled as I traced the edges of the soil. The ground was warm. As I knelt, a faint sound rippled through the air. Not a growl, not speech, but something between mimicry and memory. It repeated, over and over, the same two words in my voice. "Look closer." I should have run, but curiosity is the scientist's curse. I brushed aside the loose pine needles. Beneath them was something that looked like dried skin, thin, translucent, stretched flat like parchment. The texture was wrong. It wasn't decayed, it was shed. My pulse hammered as a breeze stirred the trees, their shadows slicing across the clearing like black ribbons. The light dimmed, and for a moment, the world felt inverted. Sound drained out, replaced by the rhythm of slow breathing behind me. I turned, and there it was again. The pale one, closer now, its face smooth and unfinished, yet somehow shaped with intention, as if sculpted from memory. My memory, its posture matched mine, shoulders rising with the same shallow breaths. When I stepped back, it mirrored the movement, one beat late. Like a delayed reflection in a dark pond, I raised the flashlight, but the beam refracted across its skin, bending as though the surface wasn't solid. Every instinct screamed to run, yet something about its presence felt pleading, almost sorrowful. It reached a hand forward, 5 elongated fingers trembling slightly, and in a broken whisper it spoke. Harlow. That name shouldn't have meant anything, but it was my colleague's. The next day I found his vehicle abandoned near the trailhead. The spiral erased, the cameras gone. Only one file remained on the drive, the final recording from my own tent, showing me asleep, lips moving as though dreaming. When I turned up the volume, I heard myself whisper, "I'm still under the pines." There's a kind of silence in the wilderness that feels intelligent, not absence, but attention. I felt it the first night my thermal rig began picking up something that shouldn't exist. I was testing night vision equipment for a wildlife project in the northern ranges, logging heat signatures of nocturnal animals. Every life form glows differently in infrared. Deer like gentle embers, foxes sharp as streaking sparks. But that night, one shape appeared that didn't belong to the natural spectrum. It blinked in and out, like a candle that refused to die. At first, I assumed it was equipment failure, thermal drift maybe. But the readings were precise, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, human temperature. And it was moving, slowly, deliberately, keeping pace with me. The shape appeared behind tree lines, vanished when I turned. My pulse spiked as the realization settled. I wasn't alone out here. The mountains have their own kind of logic, the kind that makes you believe echoes have memories. I switched my lens to the black hot mode, where warm bodies appear dark against a white void. That's when I saw it clearly. A silhouette tall and narrow, watching me from between two pines. It wasn't standing still. It swayed, matching the rhythm of my own breathing. I lowered the camera. Nothing, just trees and darkness. I lifted it again, and it was closer. I whispered a test phrase under my breath. The kind we use to check audio pickup. Testing. Testing. Through the headset, the words came back delayed, my voice returning a half-second late. Testing. Testing. But my mouth wasn't moving the second time. The mimicry was exact. Tone, cadence, even my nervous exhale between words. I froze, staring into the thermal display as the dark figure tilted its head, like it was listening. The rational mind always searches for structure in fear. Maybe sound reflection from the nearby cliff face. Maybe a bear. But bears don't repeat words. Bears don't breathe in sync with you. The wind had stopped completely, as if the forest itself was holding its lungs. My headset crackled again, this time with faint rhythmic breathing. My breathing. I ripped it off, but the sound didn't stop. It was coming from behind me. I turned, flashlight raised. Nothing but pine needles and a slow mist crawling low to the ground. I exhaled sharply, laughing at my paranoia, until I saw something that turned the air to glass. Footprints. Not just one set, but two overlapping perfectly. One pair mine, the other slightly larger, spaced the same distance apart, as though something walked exactly where I had. A half step later, I took a photograph trying to capture proof. But the screen on my camera glitched, colors inverted, pixels bleeding white. And in the static of the display, a phrase shimmered faintly, burned into the distortion. Stay still. The night around me deepened, pulling me inward, and for the first time, I realized the heat I'd been tracking wasn't just following. It was mirroring. I didn't obey the message. Every part of me wanted to move, to run, to scream, to break the unnatural stillness that pressed on my skull like a vice. But curiosity has a cruel gravity. I raised the camera again. The lens flickered, the heat map pulsing like a heartbeat, and there it was. The same figure, standing exactly where I had been seconds before. I watched it lift a hand, the outline trembling in waves of heat distortion. When I lowered the lens, the clearing was empty. But the air wasn't. I could feel its presence, like static on the back of my neck. I switched the lens to full infrared. The landscape erupted in gradients of blue and red, thermal ghosts of everything alive. My own form glowed bright amber. The thing, however, shimmered faintly, its heat signature fragmented, pulsing as though it couldn't decide whether to exist. It was learning, I thought. Learning how to be warm. The breathing returned, not from one direction, but all around me, overlapping like layered recordings. My headset, still hanging around my neck, crackled to life again. Stay still, my own voice whispered, perfectly calm. But then it changed, stretching syllables like melting wax. Stay still. The tone deepened, distorted, until it became something hollow, mechanical, like air forced through an empty shell. I backed away slowly, scanning every tree. The forest was dense with fog now, heavy and wet. My boots crunched over leaves that sounded too loud. Each step magnified in the silence. Then the world blinked. Not metaphorically, I mean the light changed. For one split second, every tree, every shadow, every blade of grass turned a bright, radiant white through the thermal scope, like the forest itself had taken a breath. When the image normalized, the figure was inches away. Its outline flickered like flame in slow motion. There was no face, only smooth, heatless void where features should be. Yet I felt its attention, focused and deliberate. I tried to move, but my muscles locked. I don't know if it was fear or something else. The air around it bent slightly, like a mirage in desert heat. Then came the whisper, my voice again, this time spoken without the radio. Cold hurts. It took me a moment to realize what it meant. My breath fogged in the air. Temperature was dropping fast. My thermal screen confirmed it. The entire perimeter of the clearing had plunged below freezing. Only the figure remained neutral, untouched by cold, as if it existed in a different season. I stumbled backward and the camera fell, landing lens up. For a moment it showed two shapes, mine and its, overlapping perfectly. Heat signatures blending until we were indistinguishable. The device died in my hand. Silence reclaimed the forest. When I returned to base hours later, the data had vanished, overwritten by white noise except for one final frame. It showed the woods empty, my gear scattered, and a faint humanoid imprint on the ground where I had stood, warm, glowing faintly against the cold earth. Sometimes I wonder if it was mimicking me or replacing me following tracks through snow. Each print feels like a heartbeat frozen in motion, proof that something lived, moved, fled. I'd spent my life reading those imprints, studying migration and behavior for the Park Service. But the ones I found that January morning didn't belong to any known rhythm of nature. They were too symmetrical, too deliberate, stretching out in a perfect loop that circled the same clearing again and again. Like something had walked until it forgot how to stop. I remember crouching low, my breath clouding in the frigid air, studying the snow around the prints. No signs of drag marks, no signs of distress. Whatever made them walked calmly, purposefully, yet never left the perimeter. My radio crackled faintly behind me, just static and faint interference, the kind of sound that makes the forest feel sentient. I marked the coordinates, noting the odd spacing of the steps. Too long for a deer, too narrow for a bear. It looked human, but even barefoot hikers didn't move like that. The strides were precise. I followed the tracks deeper into the woods, the sound of my boots sinking into snow filling the empty silence like a metronome. The loop expanded into a larger spiral winding toward a frozen pond. Around me, trees leaned at unnatural angles, their trunks warped as if bent by something pushing outward from the inside. The footprints never broke pattern. They just kept circling, tighter and tighter, until the final print vanished near the center of the pond, as if the walker had simply stopped existing. Rational thought battled instinct. I told myself the snow could have covered the rest. But there was no wind that day, and the prints were fresh, sharp edges, no melt, no distortion. My glove trembled as I reached out and pressed my hand into one. The indentation was shallow yet warm. That's when I noticed a second set emerging behind mine. Identical, following my steps. I turned sharply, flashlight beam cutting across the frost like a blade. No one there, but when I looked back down, the new prints were already a few paces behind mine, leading back the way I'd come, tracing me, perfectly. Every nerve in my body tightened. The forest felt smaller suddenly, as if the air itself was folding inward. My radio sputtered again, a faint voice barely audible through static. It sounded like me. "Don't lose the trail," it whispered, echoing something I'd said earlier into my recorder. I froze. I hadn't transmitted that. The device hung from my belt, untouched. I backed away, breath catching in my throat. Eyes locked on the overlapping trails, mine and the others, winding endlessly into one another like reflections in a hall of mirrors. The prints behind me began to deepen, snow compressing as if something invisible stood there, weight shifting from one leg to another. I stepped forward instinctively, and the new print stepped too, exactly half a second later. The circle was no longer just on the ground. It was around me. I ran. I didn't think. I just moved, boots pounding through snow so white it glowed under the pale light of dawn. My breath tore the air in gasps, my body screaming to escape a rhythm that wasn't mine anymore. But the prints followed. Every time I looked back, a second pair bloomed behind me, mirroring each stride with impossible precision. I veered off the path, crashing through underbrush, desperate to break the pattern. Yet when I looked down again, the trail reappeared, still circular, still perfect. It was as if the forest itself was rearranging to keep me within its orbit. The human brain isn't built for repetition that refuses to end. It starts to break, to slip between what's real and what's reflection. I began counting steps aloud, a technique for orientation. 1, 2, 3. My voice echoed, delayed. Another voice, softer, repeated the count from behind. 1, 2, 3. The pitch was identical. My pitch. I stopped at 30. The echo stopped too. My mouth went dry as snow dusted my gloves like ash. Ahead, I spotted an old ranger post, a weather-beaten structure half swallowed by trees. Relief washed through me, irrational and fragile. Shelter meant logic, and logic meant safety. I forced the door open, the wood creaking like an old lung exhaling. Inside, everything smelled of rust and frostbitten paper. The desk was buried under logbooks. Their ink bled into near illegible stains. I flipped one open and froze. Every entry was written in my handwriting. Same strokes, same notes, same signature. Even the date, today's date. The entry read, "Tracks continue to circle. pattern stable. Observer still inside loop. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. My radio hissed softly as though exhaling alongside me. Then came the whisper, faint but unmistakable. Still inside, I spun toward the door. Outside, the snow was pristine again. No prints, no spiral, no trail. Just untouched white stretching endlessly between the pines. Something clicked deep in my mind. The kind of dread that feels clinical, logical, absolute. Maybe the circle wasn't on the ground. Maybe it was in time. A feedback loop, a behavioral recursion, an echo with no origin. I grabbed the radio, desperate to transmit something real. Ranger 7 to base, I said. I'm disoriented. Send coordinates. Static filled the response, followed by my own voice, replayed in reverse. The cabin lights flickered. My reflection appeared faintly in the frosted window, only it wasn't quite right. My head tilted, but the reflection didn't. It stood perfectly still. Then slowly the frost began to melt from the inside, revealing not glass, but a thin sheet of ice. And within it, faint but visible, another version of my face stared back, eyes wide, lips moving without sound. I backed away until my shoulders hit the log wall. The reflection whispered one final phrase that seeped into me like water through cracks. You left already. When the rescue team found the cabin 3 days later, there were 2 sets of tracks circling it. One leading in, one leading out, both identical in size and depth. But only one set ended. I used to think silence was peace. Out here, though, silence is a verdict. It was late autumn when I learned that truth. When the forest I had walked 100 times before suddenly forgot how to breathe. I was a seasonal ranger stationed near the western ridges, where the air always smelled of pine and the wind hummed low through the valleys. That night began like any other patrol, stars sharp as pins above, frost whispering across the trail. Then, as I reached the old fire road, everything stopped. It wasn't gradual. It was like someone had muted the world mid-sentence. No insects, no wind. Even the crunch of my boots sounded wrong, muffled, like walking through a dream that refused to echo. I remember lifting my flashlight and seeing my breath suspended in front of me, unmoving. Frozen midair. For a moment I thought it was exhaustion, sensory fatigue from too many shifts. But the forest didn't resume. It held itself perfectly still, as if waiting. I checked my watch. Dead. The digital screen flickered, then went black. My radio buzzed once, then joined the silence. That's when I noticed the trees. Their branches weren't swaying, but tilted, all at the same precise angle, pointing towards something deeper in the woods. My body acted before my brain could object. I followed their direction. The deeper I went, the stranger it became. The temperature dropped sharply, though the air remained unmoving. I passed a stream I knew well, but the water wasn't flowing. It looked carved in glass, each ripple frozen mid-motion. My reflection stared back at me, distorted in the still current. Only my eyes moved, I whispered, just to hear a human sound. Hello? The word vanished before it could carry. I didn't hear it bounce back. There was no echo, no evidence it had ever existed. That's when the thought slid into my mind uninvited. Maybe sound itself was being swallowed. I stumbled upon a clearing I'd never seen marked on any map. At its center stood an old weather tower, half collapsed, coated in frost. My flashlight beam caught something hanging from one of the broken railings, a ranger's jacket. My jacket, the same one I'd lost last winter, but it looked freshly laundered, the insignia bright, fabric unweathered by time. I reached for it. The moment my fingers brushed the sleeve, sound returned like an explosion. Wind tore through the clearing, branches groaned, the stream surged forward as if reality had just pressed play again. I fell backward, heart pounding, lungs burning from the sudden rush of air. Then, beneath all that chaos, a new sound emerged, faint but deliberate. It was the ticking of a clock, not from my wrist, but from beneath the ground. The frozen stream began to ripple backward, as if time had reversed. And in the mirrored surface of the water, my reflection smiled. A half second I blinked, but the damage was done. My mind fractured between logic and dread, part of me whispering mirage, the other screaming that the forest was rewriting its own rules. I backed away from the stream, boots sinking into thawing soil. Beneath the sound of rushing water, the ticking grew louder, clearer, mechanical. Each tick landed perfectly between my heartbeats, like it was keeping time with me. I knelt, pressed a gloved hand to the ground. The vibration was steady, deep and pulsing, as though something enormous and unseen was stirring far below. My radio snapped to life with a burst of static, followed by my own voice, faint but unmistakable. "Do not move," I froze hard in my throat. "If you move, it will notice." My recorded voice was calm, eerily steady, the tone I used in search briefings. I stared at the device as it continued. "You've already stepped out of sequence." Then the transmission ended. The forest around me shifted, though not visibly, more like the air rearranged its weight. The ticking stopped. The wind followed, and then, as though obeying some unseen cue, the world exhaled again into stillness. A different kind of stillness this time. Deliberate, observant. The trees seemed closer now, their trunks warped slightly inward. I took a cautious step back, and a second identical step echoed behind me. I turned sharply, beam cutting across layers of mist. There was no one, yet the air shimmered faintly where my light struck, like heat distortion. The shimmer pulsed once, twice before collapsing into nothing. I aimed my flashlight downward. My shadow was wrong. It was standing slightly apart from me, its edges trembling, out of sync with my movements. I lifted my arm. The shadow hesitated, then followed. I ran for the tower. My breath came in ragged bursts, echoing through the clearing that now hummed with a low-frequency vibration. It sounded almost like the forest was alive, not in the poetic sense, but literally, humming with an undercurrent too organized to be random. I reached the base of the structure and climbed. The metal rungs burned cold against my palms. Halfway up, the air thickened, sound stretching and warping as though underwater. When I reached the platform, I looked down and froze. There were two of me standing below. One still, one climbing, both lit by my flickering beam. The figure on the ground lifted its head. My own eyes stared back, expression neutral, almost tranquil. Then it raised its hand and gestured toward the sky. Above me, clouds had stopped mid-drift. The moonlight froze like a photograph. The entire world hung in suspension again. Only the ticking returned, steady, patient. The other me spoke, though I heard it inside my skull instead of through the air. "Now you see what watches when time stops." I shut my eyes, bracing for something, a fall, a sound, a scream. But when I opened them, I was standing at the edge of the fire road, dawn breaking pale and gray. The stream flowed as if nothing had happened. Weeks later, while reviewing my body cam footage, I noticed a frame that shouldn't exist. For exactly 1 second, everything on screen is frozen mid-motion, except for me, still walking. Radio static has a sound that can hypnotize you if you listen long enough. The white hiss feels alive, shifting, almost breathing. For most people, it's just noise. But for a late-night ranger like me, stationed at a remote monitoring post deep in the mountains, that static was my company. The nights were long, the temperature brutal, and the world outside my small cabin stretched into an ocean of darkness. That's why I noticed the anomaly almost immediately, a voice breaking through the static at 2:17 a.m., trembling but deliberate, calling for help from a channel that didn't exist. The voice was male, mid-40s maybe, panicked but restrained, like someone whispering while hiding. "Base, this is Officer Monroe," it said. "We've got movement in the pines." Multiple figures. The signal cracked and died. I leaned closer to the receiver, frowning. Monroe had been one of ours, 5 years ago. He'd vanished during a blizzard patrol in 2019. His call sign was retired, his unit disbanded. Still, there it was on my readout. Unit 9B Monroe, transmitting live. I checked the logs. No open channels. The tower was running on an isolated frequency, limited to the region within 5 miles. But the call had pinged from 50 miles east, near the ruins of his old outpost. My first instinct was technical malfunction, radio wave reflection, maybe a weather inversion. But when the same voice came again 15 minutes later, the words made my skin tighten. "It's not wind," he whispered. "They're calling back." I recorded the transmission. The words replayed clean, no distortion. My supervisor didn't respond to my relay, so I sat there, half in fear, half in awe, listening to static that now felt intelligent. Between bursts of noise, I began hearing faint tones, rhythmic beeps, almost musical, repeating every 17 seconds. I traced them on a spectrogram, and they formed a pattern, the exact coordinates of Monroe's last known position. Curiosity dragged me out into the cold. The signal weakened as I left the tower, then flared bright again whenever I pointed the antenna toward the east ridge. The air was still heavy, expectant. I recorded audio continuously, muttering notes under my breath. My breath came in clouds, my hands trembling from more than cold. Then the tone changed. The beep stretched into a sustained frequency, low and resonant. When I tuned the gain higher, I heard a voice beneath it. My voice. "Do not respond," it said. "It's not him." I froze, staring at the readout, heartbeat pounding like static in my ears. The radio hissed once, then cleared completely. And in that silence, Monroe's voice returned one last time, softer, broken. "They don't just listen, they record." I stood there in the frost, the horizon pale with distant lightning, realizing I'd just become a signal in someone else's transmission. When I returned to base, the tower log had already updated. The last broadcast labeled Monroe 2024, but I hadn't entered it. For days after that transmission, the air around the tower felt charged, like static trapped between worlds. Every night at 2:17 a.m., the exact minute Monroe's voice had first come through, the receiver would click on by itself. Sometimes it was only faint hums. Other times fragments of conversation drifted through, my own voice layered with others I didn't recognize. Each recording felt like an echo from a place slightly out of sync with time. I stopped sleeping. The noise became my oxygen, and I began mapping the signals as if they were constellations. The deeper I analyzed, the stranger it became. The spectrogram patterns weren't random. They formed shapes. Waveforms that mirrored human pulse readings. Each transmission carried subtle tonal shifts that resembled breathing. The forest outside began to hum faintly in unison with the static, branches trembling without wind. I started wondering if the radio wasn't receiving at all, but transmitting something through me. At 3:04 a.m. on the fourth night, I heard the word return. The signal spiked, my monitors flickering, lights dimming as though the power grid itself inhaled. The radio dials spun wildly, all frequencies aligning for a brief moment into one perfect, steady tone. I'd read about this sympathetic frequency phenomena, where two oscillating systems synchronize. But synchronization implies connection, which meant something out there was tuning into me. I grabbed my field recorder and followed the antenna's direction into the woods. The signal grew stronger the deeper I went, the tone vibrating through the ground beneath my boots. Trees loomed like pillars, their bark shimmering faintly with condensation. The smell of ozone thickened, the same scent before a thunderstorm. I stopped when the static became rhythmic, almost heartbeat-like. The tower behind me vanished into fog. Ahead, a faint orange glow pulsed between the pines. My recorder picked up new data, overlapping voices, all speaking at once in perfect unison. Fragments of ranger reports, search logs, distress calls. Then I recognized one of them, my own check-in from the previous night. The transmission was repeating me, word for word, tone for tone, down to every tremor in my breath. My throat went dry as I whispered into the mic, "Who's broadcasting this?" The forest answered back with my voice, but older, raspier, almost worn out. I turned to run, but the static surged so loud it felt physical, pressing against my skull until my vision blurred. When I finally stumbled back to the tower, the equipment had reset. Every system light glowed green, steady and calm. But one file sat on the screen that hadn't been there before. Record 1001. I played it. The first 30 seconds were silent. Then came the faint sound of my own footsteps crunching snow, followed by breathing, not mine, slower and deeper. A voice whispered through the noise, the same voice I'd once called Monroe's. "It's your turn to answer." The file ended with the timestamp for the next night's hour, 2:17 a.m. It doesn't echo. It lingers, like a voice unsure whether to stay or fade. I learned that on the third day of a missing hiker search in the canyons north of Elk Valley. The cliffs there are riddled with caverns, dry limestone tunnels that twist for miles beneath the surface. My job was to assist the sonar team in mapping the inner chambers after multiple hikers vanished near an uncharted crevasse. We weren't chasing ghosts, we were chasing data, or so I told myself. The entrance yawned like a wound at the base of the ridge. Our sonar operator, a quiet man named Reeves, set up the rig. a dish-shaped transducer that pulsed rhythmic bursts into the dark, measuring distance through reflected sound. The first scans came back normal, stable geometry, predictable bounce patterns. But then, around the fourth pulse, the computer showed something impossible. A second reflection, identical to ours, delayed by 1 heartbeat. Reeves frowned. "Could be interference," he muttered, tweaking dials. But the pattern repeated, consistent, intelligent. Each time we pinged the cavern, something deeper answered. Not a perfect mirror, but close enough to feel deliberate. I leaned over his shoulder, watching the frequency bands flatten, then rise again, as if an unseen sonar was sending us the same signal back. Curiosity swallowed fear. We carried a portable transceiver deeper inside, marking walls with chalk. The tunnels narrowed until they became little more than veins in the stone. Our voices came back warped, elastic, the sound bouncing off angles that didn't seem to obey physics. Reeves recorded continuously, whispering numbers into the mic. When we reached a dead end, he sent another ping. The return came faster than it should have, and from behind us, we froze. The rig still pulsed, steady and calm, but the echoes no longer matched. They overlapped, one response slightly higher in pitch, mimicking Reeves's last word. Depth. He turned to me, face pale. "Did you hear?" Before he finished, the sonar emitted a tone we hadn't sent. A low, trembling hum that seemed to crawl under the skin. The rock walls vibrated gently, almost breathing. We shut off the system. The sound didn't stop. It deepened, became hollow like the resonance of a giant chest cavity exhaling. Reeves held up a hand, signaling silence. But I could still hear it, faint, rhythmic tapping beneath the hum, like footsteps echoing inside the stone. My flashlight beam jittered as I turned in a slow circle, catching moisture slicking the walls. For a moment, the ripples formed a pattern, concentric rings that pulsed outward, as if responding to a heartbeat. Then came the whisper. Not through the radio, not through the device, but through the rock itself, vibrating against bone. My name, once softly like the canyon remembering me. Reeves dropped his headset and bolted toward the exit, shouting that the signal was chasing us. I hesitated, looking back one last time at the sonar screen. There were 2 signals now. One labeled Source A. The other newly appeared, labeled simply U. Reeves didn't stop running. I chased after him, the beam of my flashlight bouncing wildly across the walls, shadows jerking like marionettes. The deeper we went, the louder the sound became. Not echo, not feedback, but resonance, as if the entire cavern were one vast speaker. My chest vibrated with it, ribs rattling. When we finally stumbled into a wider chamber, the signal peaked so violently that our equipment blinked red and died. The sudden silence afterward felt surgical, absolute. "Do you hear that?" Reeves whispered. I shook my head, but my pulse pounded in my ears so hard it almost became a sound of its own. Then came the tapping again, soft, precise, like knuckles on hollow wood. Only this time it wasn't beneath us. It was above. We aimed our lights upward. The ceiling shimmered like wet glass, and behind the stone, faint shadows moved. Slow, deliberate, and perfectly synchronized with our own gestures. Reeves muttered a curse and stumbled back, kicking up dust that glowed faintly in the beam. The particles hung midair longer than they should have, suspended in a rhythm that matched the sonar pulse we'd turned off minutes ago. My gut twisted with the realization that maybe the device hadn't been measuring the cave. Maybe it had been teaching it how to listen. We decided to leave the rig. But as we turned to retrace our steps, the tunnel behind us was gone. Not collapsed, gone. Just smooth, solid limestone where an open passage had been. Reeves pressed his hand against it, his palm leaving a faint thermal print. The wall pulsed once in response, like a slow heartbeat. That's when my radio crackled to life, a frequency I hadn't tuned. "Don't leave yet," it said. My name followed, drawn out like breath over glass. Reeves's eyes met mine, wide and terrified. He grabbed my arm. "It's copying the feed," he said, voice trembling. "It's learning our frequency." Before I could answer, another voice came through, identical to his. "It's learning our frequency." Something deep inside the stone laughed, a low, layered vibration that shook dust from the ceiling. The sound felt wrong, inverted, as though silence itself had found a tone. We bolted. I don't remember running. only the way the air thickened around me, heavy and electric. The radio kept sputtering our voices back at us, one heartbeat late. My body was a tuning fork, vibrating with fear and sound until I didn't know which was which. When we finally burst into daylight, the signal stopped. Reeves collapsed beside me, gasping, his eyes glassy. He didn't say a word. We just listened to the wind like it was the first sound ever made. Back at base, the sonar data was corrupted. White noise except for one segment, a perfect mirrored copy of our final transmission. The waveform looked exactly like two voices speaking in unison, layered over each other. Beneath it, written in digital marker, a line of text we hadn't typed read, "Echo complete." Some stories begin with disbelief. Mine began with a smell, sharp, metallic, almost sweet. I was the on-call paramedic for a reservation clinic near the borderlands, a place where the night stretched long and the folklore stretched longer. We got a distress call from a lone cabin on the western rim. "Man injured," the dispatcher said. "Severe lacerations." Simple enough. But as soon as we arrived, I knew it wasn't going to be simple. The front door hung open. The porch was streaked with dark residue that looked like dried mud, except it shimmered faintly under the flashlight. The man sat slumped near the hearth, shirt torn, hands trembling. His skin was pale, not in the way of blood loss, but something else, as if the color had been erased. Across his chest were deep, clean slashes, symmetrical like surgical incisions. I knelt beside him, bracing for the gush of crimson I'd seen 100 times before. But there was none. The cuts were dry, no blood. Only a faint gray dust flaked from the wounds like ash. Reeves, my partner, muttered, "Maybe coagulated?" I shook my head. Coagulated doesn't sparkle. The man's eyes flicked toward me, unfocused but alert. "It's not mine," he whispered. His voice was brittle, cracking like ice. "It doesn't belong. We cleaned the wound anyway, but the dust didn't behave like clot." It hissed faintly on contact with saline, shrinking back as though alive. Reeves flinched, pulling away. "Jesus," he muttered. "What the hell is that?" The patient winced, gripping my wrist. His skin was cold but dry, paper-like, fragile. "It tried to take me," he rasped. Didn't finish. I'd heard enough local legends to know where this was headed. Shapeshifter myths ran deep here, the kind people spoke in hushed tones around fires. Still, science demanded reason. I told myself it was a reaction, some kind of strange necrotic compound, maybe a rare infection. Anything but what it felt like. When we loaded him into the ambulance, the sensors glitched. The heart monitor displayed 2 pulse rates, one steady, one faint, and lagging half a second behind. His temperature didn't register at all. I restarted the machine 3 times, but it kept showing the same impossible data. Duplicate vitals. Halfway to the clinic, the man reached out and touched my gloved hand. His fingertips left faint gray prints that burned cold against my skin. "You shouldn't look too close," he whispered. "It looks back." Then he smiled weakly, the kind of smile that knows the end of something sacred. We pulled into the emergency bay, and I turned to check his pulse. The stretcher was empty. The cabin door at the back of the ambulance hung open, no sign of forced release. Only a thin layer of gray dust coated the gurney, forming the outline of a body that had once been there. Reeves stared, speechless. Then from the radio, the patient's voice, steady, composed, came through our frequency. Stood there, "Don't clean it up," frozen by the impossible. The dust still shimmered faintly under the harsh fluorescent lights, glinting like powdered glass. Reeves cursed under his breath and grabbed a specimen jar, sweeping a bit of it inside. The moment the particles hit the plastic, they twitched, almost imperceptibly, aligning themselves along the edges like iron filings drawn to a magnet. My hands trembled as I sealed the lid. I didn't want to believe it, but part of me already knew. This wasn't decomposition. It was imitation. We ran tests. No identifiable DNA, no organic markers, nothing that belonged to any human tissue. Under the microscope, the particles behaved like microscopic filaments, each strand pulsing faintly, synchronizing with our own heartbeats. When I leaned closer, the image on the monitor shimmered, distorting for a moment into something almost anatomical. Not a cell, not a parasite, but a structure trying to become one. Reeves joked weakly. "It's like it's rebuilding itself." Neither of us laughed. At 3:11 a.m., the lab lights flickered. The dust inside the containment jar began to move, swirling slowly, gathering shape. A faint outline formed against the glass, fingers first, then the curve of a hand pressing outward. I took a step back. Reeves whispered, "It's responding to us." I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. When I turned off the lights, the particles glowed faintly from within, pulsing like bioluminescent plankton. We transferred the jar into isolation, but something had already changed. My smartwatch buzzed randomly, picking up ghost heart rates whenever I passed the sealed chamber. Once, during a walk past the observation window, the monitor reading spiked to 98.6 degree human body temperature, the exact number that belonged to our missing patient. I barely slept. The few times I closed my eyes, I saw him, the man in the cabin, standing beside my bed, eyes empty, whispering through lips that didn't move. "You're wearing me now." When I woke, my sheets were dusted with that same gray residue. Reeves wanted to call it into the bureau, but something told me to wait. Curiosity again, that slow, terrible kind of courage scientists mistake for duty. By the fifth night, the jar was empty. No broken seals, no tampering, just a thin ring of frost clinging to the bottom. Security footage showed a faint shimmer passing through the corridor at 2:14 a.m., like heat rising from asphalt. The next morning, Reeves didn't show up for shift. I found his ID badge near the emergency bay door, and beneath it, a single palm print in ash. I left that same day, but the strange readings followed me home. Every device I own, phone, watch, even my stethoscope sensor, occasionally blips with an extra pulse that isn't mine. Sometimes, when I stand in front of the mirror, my reflection lags half a second behind, just long enough for me to see it blink before I do. And in the quiet hours of the night, when my heartbeat slows, I swear I can hear another one. Faint, steady and trying to sink. Forests change, but memories don't. That's what I told myself as I parked near the old trailhead where I'd gone missing as a child. I was 9 when they found me, barefoot, dazed, and miles from where I'd vanished. The search team said I couldn't have survived the cold that long. My mother said I came back different. I laughed when she said it. Now, decades later, I wasn't laughing. Something in me had been tugging back toward this place. A pull I couldn't explain, like the woods had been whispering my name for years. The air felt heavy as I stepped out of the car. The trees looked older, thicker, but the layout was wrong, almost rearranged. Paths that should have led north curved toward hollows I didn't recognize. My GPS flickered, spinning aimlessly before freezing on coordinates that didn't exist. I followed instinct instead, drawn to the faint sound of running water somewhere ahead. As I walked, that feeling of familiarity deepened. The same scent of wet moss, the same distant echo of birds that always seemed to call twice. The forest wasn't new to me, it was remembering me. After an hour, I found the creek, the same one from my childhood photos. But there was something carved into the rock this time, a series of initials and a date. My initials, my handwriting. The date read 1989, the year I'd gone missing. The letters were smooth, as if time had refused to erode them. I traced them with trembling fingers, and the water beneath my hand rippled though the air was still. The rational part of me scrambled for footing. Maybe I'd been here before, maybe I'd carved it and forgotten. Memory is fallible, I told myself. But when I stood and looked around, the forest was no longer silent. The birds stopped. The wind paused. Even my own heartbeat seemed to dim under a deeper rhythm, one that pulsed faintly through the ground, like the forest itself had a pulse. I lifted my camera and snapped a photo of the carvings. The screen froze, glitching, the image fragmenting into mirrored halves. And between those halves, something faint, a reflection that wasn't mine. It stood on the opposite bank, same height, same posture, same jacket. For a heartbeat, I thought it was a trick of light. But when I raised my hand, the figure didn't follow. "It only watched," I shouted, my voice echoing too far, too long. The sound came back fractured, repeating my words in an older tone. Slower, deeper, tired. My pulse raced. Every tree around me seemed to lean inward, listening. I stumbled back toward the trail, but the ground beneath my boots had changed. The soil was soft, freshly disturbed, marked with footprints identical to mine, but deeper, as if someone heavier had walked them before me. Then I heard it. Faint, almost tender. My mother's voice calling my name from somewhere behind me. Only she'd been dead for 3 years. Her voice drew me backward before my mind could resist. It was so precise, so achingly familiar, every vowel shaped with the same tenderness I remembered from childhood. "Come home," it said, lilting between the trees. My throat tightened. I told myself it couldn't be real, that it was some auditory trick, the forest amplifying wind through the branches. But I knew that tone. I'd heard it when she found me the first time, covered in frost and silence. I followed. The deeper I went, the older everything felt. The trunks grew thick as columns, moss draped like fabric over the roots. My flashlight flickered as if reluctant to see. That's when I found the clearing, circular, unnaturally even. In the center stood a tree unlike the rest, its bark smooth, almost polished, pale as bone. Symbols were carved into its surface, spirals, half-finished names, and one word etched over and over: home. My heart stuttered. The handwriting was mine. The air pulsed again, that rhythmic heartbeat I'd felt before. Beneath my boots, the soil seemed to shift, softening, expanding like a living lung. I stepped closer to the tree and pressed my palm against the carvings. The wood was warm, human warm. A faint vibration traveled up my arm, then into my chest. Suddenly, I wasn't standing in the clearing anymore. The world around me flickered, then rewound. The moon reversed its path across the sky, branches knitting themselves back into younger versions. I stood in the same clearing, but the carvings were fresh, the air sharper, newer. My breath came out as white mist, and in front of me, a small boy crouched by the same tree, a pocket knife in his hand, carving initials with deliberate care. My initials. My breath caught. The boy turned. He looked exactly like me at 9 years old. Hair, scar, even the faded blue jacket I'd lost that winter. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and full of recognition. I took a step forward, but he spoke first. "You came back." His voice trembled between joy and something colder. "It's your turn now." I tried to speak, to ask what he meant, but my tongue felt heavy, words swallowed by the air that seemed to thicken with time. The boy smiled faintly and pressed his palm against the tree, right where mine had been. The carving shimmered once, glowing faintly like veins beneath skin. Then I was standing alone again. The clearing aged in seconds, bark darkening, moss reclaiming everything. My flashlight flickered back to life, beam shaking over the same pale trunk. Except now there was a new carving beneath the old ones. My full name. The date carved below read 2025. I stumbled back, heart pounding, and sprinted toward where I thought the trail should be. When I finally burst out of the tree line, the world felt wrong. The stars arranged differently, the road cracked with age. My GPS flickered once more, displaying a single word where coordinates should be: home. Sometimes, when I look in the mirror now, I swear the face looking back is younger. The same eyes I saw in that clearing, waiting for the next investigation when facts start feeling like fiction, when logic bends under the weight of what it's trying to explain. That's where I found myself, sitting in the ranger station, surrounded by boxes of recordings, reports, and field notes from every strange case that had haunted these forests for decades. Mimicked voices, circling tracks, shadows that learned your movements. I'd studied them all, convinced there had to be a pattern, a rational thread that tied every impossible thing together. But the deeper I listened, the less it sounded like coincidence and more like communication. Each report carried an echo, a repeated sound, an image distortion, a frequency that lingered just below human hearing. I started isolating those anomalies, playing them side by side. What I heard made my skin crawl. The sounds weren't random. They were rhythmic, almost conversational. Pulses layered in threes, repeating intervals, like heartbeats trying to synchronize. I ran a frequency analysis across hundreds of clips, from missing hiker audio to forest surveillance logs, and the pattern emerged every time. A biological fingerprint, I thought. The forest was alive, but not as we'd defined it. When I filtered out the human interference, the signal became clearer. Beneath the static, something breathed, not metaphorically, but with structure and pace. I played one clip backward, then another, and realized they aligned perfectly. What one file exhaled, another inhaled. Together they formed a loop. The woods weren't just echoing sound, they were responding to it. The breakthrough came on the 5th night. when exhaustion and obsession blurred. I left my recorder running near the northern ridge, the place where the mimic incidents were most frequent. When I returned at dawn, the forest looked untouched, except for a small circle of disturbed earth where the device had been. The recorder was still there, still warm, still running. I played it back on site. For 7 hours there was only wind. Then at 3:19 a.m., a whisper, my name, followed by my own voice replying, I'm listening. But I hadn't said a word. I took the device back to the station, replaying the moment again and again. The waveform was clean, no splice, no interference. My response was real. I checked the logs, but at that time I'd been asleep in my cabin half a mile away. The signal wasn't a recording. It was a return. After that, I began hearing the tone everywhere, in the hum of fluorescent lights, in the oscillation of my own breath. The boundary between forest and body, between signal and self, started to thin. Maybe that was the point. Maybe mimicry wasn't imitation at all, but assimilation. On the last file I ever recorded, the frequency spike didn't trail off like before. It built. And just before the tape cut, the static formed one coherent phrase, clear, deliberate, almost tender. You made us real. At first, I thought the phrase was just another anomaly, a trick of layered echoes merging into meaning. But the more I replayed it, the more intentional it felt. The voice wasn't mine, not exactly, but it carried my inflections, my hesitations, like something that had spent a long time practicing how to sound human and had finally perfected it. I tried isolating the waveform again, slowing it down, reversing it. Every iteration revealed something new. Beneath the main phrase, faint and rhythmic, was another voice whispering in harmony with it. We were always here. That sentence tore through every rational defense I had left. If these forests could remember sound, mimic it, store it, then maybe every voice, every cry, every word ever spoken among these trees still existed somewhere in the soil and air. I imagined the earth as a living archive, recording everything that trespassed through its silence, not haunting us but reflecting us. The thought was almost beautiful until I realized reflection works both ways. I shut everything down, the monitors, the oscillators, even the backup drives. But when the power cut, the signal didn't. The room still hummed faintly, a low tone that resonated through the metal desk and into my bones. The forest wasn't sending anymore. It was inside the frequency of the space itself. My reflection in the dark window quivered slightly, delayed by a fraction of a second. I spoke aloud, quietly, "Who are you?" The reply came without hesitation, spoken in my voice but threaded with dozens of others, overlapping tones that breathed in and out of sync, like a choir remembering how to be one thing. "You called us," it said, "and now we remember you." A sudden knock echoed from the door, 3 slow taps. I knew better than to answer. Instead, I turned on the recorder again, but the screen displayed no input. The mic was still picking up something, though. Faint vibrations, like footsteps circling the station. Then, softly, the static began shaping into new words, whispering them as if testing a language long forgotten. "We don't hide. You forget." Every theory I'd ever written unraveled in that moment. It wasn't mimicry. It wasn't haunting. It was inheritance, the forest learning the shape of what it observes until it becomes indistinguishable from it. Maybe that's what happened to the others. Monroe, Reeves, the hikers. They weren't taken. They were recorded, rewritten into the pattern, their frequencies absorbed like songs looping forever in the Earth's static. I shut off the recorder and stepped outside. Dawn was breaking, the light slow and cautious. The woods were utterly still. I stood there, breathing in air that tasted faintly metallic, listening to the wind move through branches like a whisper that almost made sense. My radio flickered on by itself one last time, one last message sliding through the static. Calm, steady, inevitable. "If you're hearing this," my own voice said, "then you've already been remembered. Subscribe, if you dare."